Well, thanks to you all for coming, and for those of you who aren't here watching on the NFL online website, hello. We have an interesting presentation today. We've had workshops on the World Schools Debate Championship format, which is the most popular high school debate format in the world. And we're trying to drum up some interest on the part of American schools. And one American debate group which has had a lot of success integrating world schools into their program is the Houston Urban Debate League. And I'm pleased to have them here to talk about their experience of integrating into a program that also involves policy debate and public forum debate, and also is reaching out to new schools and new audiences and multilingual environments and all that cool 21st century stuff. So, without further ado, here we go. How to integrate world schools format into your existing program. Go, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
Thanks guys, I appreciate it. Well, my name is Mark Niles. I'm the Deputy Director for the Houston Urban Debate League. So most of my job involves, running 6 debate tournaments a year, putting seminars on, going to schools every day and working with students and debaters. So it's a great job. We are a large league. And I'm pleased to be here with one of our coaches from DeBakey High School. One of her teams is competing in the World's Round Robin tomorrow, so I'd like you to say hi to her as well. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Well, my name is Sandra Rodriguez, and this is actually only my second year as a coach, and it's our first year with World Schools as a format. So I'm going to be telling you a little bit about how to integrate it into the classroom, but I'm a little bit intimidated telling you guys about it since you guys are the more experienced coaches, but I'll share what I have.
Cool. So at the end, we're going to open up time for questions. So if you have like league type questions, direct them to me. School type questions, direct them to Sandra. And with the experience we have in the room, maybe in the question section, some of the questions we have, we can bring up so the folks watching the video in the future can get more out of it. But if we can go to the first slide. So a little bit about the Houston Urban Debate League. So we were established in 2008, and the Urban Debate League movement has been going on for a while, and we have a parent organization called NADL, National Association for Urban Debate Leagues. They help set up leagues like ours all over the nation. So in 2008, they really went on a big let's start new leagues around the country, and we were one of 5 new leagues that was started in 2008. When we started, we partnered with the Houston Independent School District, which is the largest school district in Texas. Thousands and thousands of students, and I think we're the 7th largest district in the U.S., something like that.
So we service about 250,000 students in the Houston area.
It's incredible. So we have a huge student base. The first year when the partnership happened, we were asked to serve about 15 schools. That was maybe 100 to 200 kids were participating during the year. So now in our 5th year, we've grown like crazy. As you see up there, we've grown to 27 high schools, and about 1,000 students participate in debate in some form or fashion in our league each year. So we've been very, very lucky to be in a district that has let us grow. And we also have a fledgling middle school program that is not included in these numbers, but we've done some great things. Can we move to the next slide, please? So prior to this year, the Houston Urban Debate League only had one format, which was, policy debate, or CX as it's also known. And this year it was a big change for us because talking with the board, talking with coaches, it seemed like it was a year to give our students more choices. So we were talking about different debate formats to add. A gentleman on our board heard about World Schools. He actually went to the national championships in it. Guy by the name of Charlie Schaefer. He really started talking World Schools up, and the more we looked into it, we thought that was something we should add. And we also added public forum because we had quite a lot of coaches who were in other type of debate regions in our area that did PF, so that was a natural fit for us too. But what's really interesting, if you look at the numbers from this year, cross-examination and World Schools are almost equal, so you can tell that World Schools kind of shot off like a rocket in our school. We were hoping PF would do well, and we think we had some good numbers, but obviously World Schools struck a chord with many of our students and teachers. I think they really, really liked the 3-person teams. The motions changing all the time really kept them interested. We let our students and coaches send us motion ideas, and if they were good, we would use them at tournaments, so it kind of let them get a buy-in in what they were debating about. So World Schools is great, and you can see the first year it generated a lot of interest for us. So we've already talked about World Schools a little bit, but I thought we should go over a quick rundown of some of the basics, because we kind of did some different things. So quickly for those of you watching, World Schools is a little bit different than other debate formats. It has 3 people on each team. Public Forum CX, it's 2-person teams, so that's a big difference. The new motions is a huge difference in policy debate. Coaches are used to having one motion for the entire year, so students get a lot of depth there. The fact that the motions are changing every round is a fairly interesting thing. The no prep time in World Schools within the round is new to a lot of folks who are used to prep time. Points of information are new to a lot of folks. So there's lots of changes that our league wasn't used to, and all of our coaches and students had to deal with these type of things. And the speech times, although we kept these speech times for our leagues, if you're interested in integrating World Schools into your league, speech times are definitely something you can modify if you feel it doesn't work for your league. Next slide. So, when you're integrating a new format, you have to teach the format to your coaches and students. And in Huddle, we did this by using the 3 S's, which is our summer camp, our seminars, and school visits. So the summer camp, very important experience. It's usually the first week in August. It's an intense 7-day thing. The students are staying at a university in Houston overnight, and they're getting debate instruction from about 9 a.m. to 10 o'clock at night. So it's very, very intense. We usually have about 200 students at our summer camp, and we brought in some amazing Worlds instructors to our summer camp. So this was the first time most of our students got any instruction or any introduction to Worlds, but those that went to the summer camp, they really got a strong foundation, and when the school year started, those 200 or so kids were able to transfer that information to 1,000, give or take, students that we serve each year. So the summer camp really kind of was the start of integrating World Schools and PF into our league. Now, when the school year starts, we run weekend seminars. We run a few each semester. We were very lucky to have Tuna come down for our first one, and I think that's another reason that World Schools took off in our league so much, is to have an advocate like Tuna that's so animated and he can talk about the power of debate. Bring someone like that in front of our student body and talking about a format that does wonders for getting traction with students and coaches. So I highly recommend, if you're integrating World Schools, to work with people in the World Schools community. They're great and they're willing to come down and help you. So it's a small, tight-knit community and you can get help from it. And finally, you need to get out to the schools. As the league director, one of my primary jobs is getting out to the schools for debate practice, debate class, and that kind of thing. And I really think you should focus on the weaker or new schools. Give them your attention. They're, the schools that are great and have a long-standing program, you need to visit them from time to time. But when you're teaching something new, the new schools to the program and the schools that are not doing as well is where you should put your efforts. So those are the 3 ways we did it. Yeah, that's fine. In addition to training the students and coaches, judge training is something you really, really have to put in place. So since we were a policy debate league prior to this year, many of our judges in our judging pool are former policy debaters. So they're coming into our World Schools rounds, kind of judging it as a policy debate judge would judge around. So judge training was something we really tried to work on this year. One thing we did that I thought was interesting is we put this on our website and we required some of our judges to read all this information, and then there was a video of a actual debate that we had them watch, and then they had to fill out a ballot and send them to myself and the other league director. We would give them our thoughts and that kind of thing. I know people do judge training in many different ways, but in our league, it's hard to get the judges out to training. So we kind of had to go to the virtual world to make the trainings work for our folks. For what we do at our tournaments, and I think this is an interesting example, this is a poster from Tournament 3, and what we do is at the tournament, we'll put up the poster for the next tournament. So when out rounds are announced at Tournament 3, I'll post the Tournament 4 poster. So this is how we actually announce the World Schools rounds for our kids. So as soon as this goes up, there's like a crowd of like 300 kids around it. You can't even see the poster, but this is the way we would announce our topics. We did 4 prepared topics for each tournament. Then we only did 2 impromptu for Tournament 4 was octafinals and quarterfinals. So this is how we distributed that information.
There was one tournament that we didn't go to,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I emailed Mark and I said, can we have emotions for World Schools for the next tournament? He says, no, we can't do it ahead of time, not before we put this. And so
Right.
the kids were really disappointed, but
Yeah.
you have to be there, and everybody does crowd around those posters.
We'd always post it up on the web the next day, but you know, it's such an exciting moment to post this up and see people discussing the topics, 5 minutes after they've seen it. It's really cool stuff. Next slide, please. And I guess that leads us into the school portion of the presentation. Sandra will talk about DeBakey High School and what she's done there.
So this is my team here. It's composed of Zena, Purnima, and Alyssa. Most of the students that participate within Huddle are also active in NFL and TFA. So we're going to tournaments pretty regularly, anywhere from 2 to 3 a month. And the students are very familiar with the formats, the CX, LD, and PF. So it was kind of difficult when World Schools was introduced to try to drag them away from that, because when the Huddle introduced PF, everybody wanted to do that because they're familiar with that. So I kind of had to provide them with different incentives and kind of talk about it, give them the benefits of this format. So they eventually bought into it. And once you get one good team to buy into it, they kind of spread the word and kind of raise awareness and get everybody else excited about it. So I'm going to kind of target this with 2 main points, which is classroom application, and then the transitioning from prepared to impromptu. And what I really like to do is to kind of scaffold, the instruction within the classroom. Now, just to kind of tell you how this worked, we had a debate class the first semester, the fall semester of the school year, and then it didn't exist afterwards. And our original team started off as a club, so a lot of these you can probably use them in your after-school application. Go ahead. So you're already familiar with the format, and you know that with the full time that is included, the actual debate will take about nearly an hour. Okay. And if you have the traditional classroom format, which is between 45 and 50 minutes, or even if you have block schedule, which is what I have, you're spending, or you can have as much as 80 to 100 minutes, but that's still not going to be enough to really have a full debate and then do critiques. So some of the solutions that you can do is, of course, to cut the speech time. So sometimes we would take 1 to 2 minutes off of the first, second, and third speeches to just kind of get them familiar with the formats. But at some point, you really do need to give them a full 8-minute, opportunity to kind of fill in that speech, because they're not used to that, kind of doing it, in the impromptu format. So what I started to do was to cut the second or third speech to give them the time to practice with that. And so keeping the full lengths, and of course doing prepared topics. The problem with that was that the students initially, when I started doing that, they would go home and they would collect a lot of evidence, and then they would prepare the speeches and fill it up with a lot of evidence, quoting the evidence, and that was really, again, I'm talking about CXers and PFers that rely on that evidence to fill up the time. So then I started giving them kind of 4 or 5 motions at a time, and they had to be prepared for all of them, which meant that they couldn't possibly research every single one of them, and they kind of had to find examples and different ways of filling up that space. As far as engaging the rest of the class, if you're teaching, if you're lucky enough to have a debate class, engaging the class by having them do POIs within the classroom as there is a debate going on. And then I also had the problem where if I did have two teams that were debating, doing a mock debate, some of the students would be off kind of, aloof and, reading the walls or whatever. I made it to where the reply speeches would have to be given by a random student. And so you talk about students that were flowing and, writing, taking notes because they didn't know who was going to do, and they didn't know which side they were going to do. So, it kind of kept them on their toes. Yeah. Okay, so, the prepared speech is a good thing because it does expose the students to a lot of the research that is involved in getting familiar with the topics. As I said before, though, I kind of had to get them away from doing too much research, and we started to focus on ways of filling up their time by really explaining and developing the warrants for their claims and sort of using some of that logical evidence as opposed to the empirical evidence to make their case. And so as we got deeper into it and started getting a lot of practice, we started to kind of see that there were these big themes that were sort of popping up. So, some of the motions, this house would implant all children under, should say, with microchips, and then this house would allow the government to wiretap without just cause. Well, those are big issues that kind of pit privacy versus security. And so by doing that and looking at the big picture, even though the examples might be different, the arguments kind of tend to transfer to other debates or other topics. And then for impromptu, we started off with really simple type of topics within the classroom, things that the kids really cared about and could really get into. But then we started to kind of shift a little bit more to the global focus. Because we are in the United States, our students do tend to look at everything from a very, Americentric point of view, and so we kind of have to give them more of these topics where they can't rely on examples from the United States. So one of the things that we started to do was to kind of incorporate the extemporaneous speeches. I have a lot of students that do foreign extemp and U.S. Domestic extemp, but for Worlds, if they were participating in Worlds, then it was a requirement that they had to participate in foreign extemp in the regular competitions that we did with NFL. In the classroom, though, we also gave them we would give them a topic and allow them to use our extemp bin, which is on Dropbox, so it's electronic, and they would be able to pull from that, source of material. And then eventually we would, sort of graduate to the more impromptu topics where in our league we were only allowed to use an almanac, so we didn't even have a dictionary there. In addition to that, they have extemp quizzes, so that we could, the way it was set up, I would give them an extemp quiz at the beginning of the week, so they had the previous week all the way through the weekend to kind of focus on news and find out what was going on around the world. And we would take the extemp quiz and then just discuss it for the rest of the period on what was going on, just so that they would be more familiar with what was going on in the world. But that's it. Yeah. Were there any? There's some resources here, and I didn't want to add too much because I didn't want to repeat what you had already said. And he's got another list of resources at the end. Are there any other strategies that you guys utilize that might enhance or maybe in addition to what we were doing?
I liked a lot of the things that you did. I think that they're very good, and especially when you talk about gearing towards the classroom. One of the things I do with my debaters when we're preparing a prepared motion is I started from the full group brainstorming on each side and kind of let that count as the prep. And then usually we start with about 30 minutes. If it's a good motion that they know a lot about, it could take up a whole hour. But then either the end of that session or the next session, we actually just straight up debate it with whatever they know is an impromptu. And they can kind of see that from that, where the arguments are going to start going, and it helps them develop their research areas. And so that's kind of an extension of what you're doing already. I thought like you had a lot of good things, but that was one other thing. The other thing with the shortened speech times, especially when they have a motion kind of in hand, but you need to practice it with them. We do either the 4s and 2s or 6s and 3s.
Yeah.
But what I do is I make them, because one of the things, because I come from y'all, same school of debating as y'all, and I'm very specific on the line by line with them. But I noticed at world schools that it's more about the big picture, especially in the later speeches. So another exercise I would do is what we call a big picture debate. And they're not allowed any notes whatsoever. They have to remember everything, plus they have to listen to the other debaters so they can refute their arguments. And so we would do 4s and 2s or 6s and 3s without any notes. And that's another way, like especially when you're getting to the end of your prep right before a tournament, it's an excellent practice for your debaters. So those are just a couple of things that are very close to what you're doing that you might want to add to your repertoire.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, this is just a question I wanted to pose to the group. So when you're in a position like me where I'm running a league, if we want to introduce a format, we just introduce it and then we automatically have everyone in the league ready to compete. It's like built-in competition. But if you're a coach and you're isolated at your school and you want to add world schools to your program, how do you make sure they have competition outside of your school? That's a value add I would like someone who would watch this video to get out of it. Like, what would you guys give for advice on that?
Well, one thing that we've done in my, I'm from Halifax, Nova Scotia, is there are a couple schools that were quite involved. We hosted a workshop, a free workshop, and invited different schools and their coaches, and that worked pretty well. It was purely a workshop, not a competition. We provided materials, did presentations, also had the students involved in doing some debating, and that helped things get rolling.
Interesting. Because I've seen leagues build up when there's someone who just has a lot of initiative to reach out to other schools. Tuna, what do you have to say?
Well, in Vermont, all the high schools have been doing public forum debate, and the kids are getting kind of bored with it. They want something with a bit more of a challenge. So what we proposed to the coaches, and they seem very, very, accepting and excited about this because they're getting a little bored with it too, is that we're going to have a free workshop in the fall. Then we're going to have a free workshop, and then we're going to have a free tournament in the spring, and then I believe NFL, a free tournament, I think in the spring, we didn't set the date yet. And then, so my university students are going to go to individual high schools to do a brief demo and get them to do a very simple debate and some after-school things. And then at the state tournament, they're going to, because the NFL, I believe, will be inviting American World Schools teams to come to nationals next year. And so then I was saying, okay, you come to this free tournament that we're going to have at the same time as the state tournament, and then whoever wins it gets to go to nationals. So this is sort of how we're going to do it. But if everybody loves the format they're doing already, I don't think that's going to work.
Right.
But if people want something new and different, like we do, I think it can work.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you were talking about isolated coaches and isolated schools.
Right.
The internet is quite a powerful tool because there are schools in Dubai that we debate with through the net, but you just have to find the right pocket of time to stream and to make sure that your technology is okay, but we do internet classroom debates across.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Like
and so
Skype
that does mean you can connect with other schools elsewhere in the world or within your own state that are doing world schools, but you just got to figure out the dynamics of the technology. But actually, we've figured out these days, you just hold an iPad up and you can do it. It's really quick and it's fast. It's really stable to do it that way.
If I could just butt in front of Mark here, the NFL will be holding online tournaments in this next year, and they're about to roll out a whole new platform, which they're pretty much done beta testing for live. And if you have a laptop, you should be able to do it. So we're going to have situations where even if you're in an isolated school and want to do it, and that tournament, the top whatever teams from that tournament will also come to nationals. So I think it's a way to do that. And I mean, I did the first internet debate in 1999, and it's been really tough because unless everybody has their technology ducks in a row, it doesn't happen, and it's very frustrating.
Right.
But on the other hand, if you have asynchronous upload a speech, let's do it, upload a speech, it just loses a lot of the dynamics of debate.
You want to be able to see that flow happening.
Yeah, so I've been told, and the millionaire who's financing this believes that the system will work. So maybe that will help. Sorry.
Mark?
That's fine. In Sudan, actually, I had a very difficult time getting the debate league started because I was there for 3 years, and I really started trying to develop the debate league from the point I was there, but partly because anytime 3 people meet to discuss politics in Sudan, it's illegal. And so that was a little bit, I think that was a little bit of the apprehension, but when people saw we were doing it, well, of course, we were the school with the experienced coach and stuff, but what I did is I invited the other schools to come, and this is one of the most beautiful moments I've ever had as a coach or trainer, is I did mixed teams. And so it wasn't my teams debating another school.
Yeah.
We took a kid from each school and put them on a team. So you had a team of 3 or 4 kids you had from 4 different schools. And to watch the Arabic Northern Sudanese debate with a Southern Sudanese and realize they needed each other to be successful, I thought it was the microcosm for what should happen in Sudan. You know, and that really got the league going, but I also took that with me to Mexico when we started the league, and now we start our season every year with the mixed teams tournament, and so the new schools come in, because it's the way we train our novices. We just put them as a 4th on an experienced team, and so it encouraged the other teams because they knew they were going to get to be on a winning team, quite possibly, if they worked together. And also the inexperienced debaters learn from the experienced debaters, especially when they're in that 1-hour prep. Like, what do you do with your time? How do you divide it up? How do you assign roles? How do you do all that? And they learned all that stuff, and it was the fastest learning curve I've ever seen for debate.
Actually, there are lots of tournaments across the world that play with this kind of format of using experienced debaters. We've tried playing around, as in some of the Singapore schools, in the programs that I run. We also run camps, but one of the projects we've tried is debate with a parent, a coach, or a brother or sister or sibling or friend.
That's cool.
So you need to be the debater who has some experience. You can bring the adults, you can register them with you, and then you're in mixed teams the rest of the day. So moms, dads come along sometimes, other brothers and cousins. So you try to find ways to create this idea that the sharing of the debate concept is something that can really enrich everyone, and then you get a lot by in that way. I mean, going back to what you were saying about classrooms and about keeping people engaged, have you ever tried arena debating? You literally divide your class into 2 halves, and you have an opening speech that can be 3 minutes and a closing speech that can be 3 minutes, and the rest of the class there's a modified kind of cross X. You can do 10 minutes in the middle. So everybody has hands-on experience. So a 3-minute opening speaker, so that's a modified World Schools opening speech. A 3-minute closing speaker, so that's another modification. But the cross X section is literally a POI, constant point of information section. And then you can actually take 30 people in the classroom, divide it down the line 15, and then you have 1 opening speaker, 1 closing speaker, and then the rest of
So wait, is the whole discussion that happens in the middle, like POIs going
back
and
forth.
that's really
And so
What did you call it?
it's arena.
We call it pub style.
Okay, pub style.
very Canadian.
I think that there are lots of ways, and have you done balloon debating? That's another way to get people who are very young interested. So you put, you have a scenario. Usually, the scenario tends to be that the world has come to an end. There's a kind of a blimp, and the blimp is set up, and there are only X number of people who can stay on the blimp, and you pick out of a hat a role, and then you debate on why you should be kept on board.
Why that person is so
Yes,
important. Yeah.
that's right. So, and you can either do, you role play. So
Okay.
you could have, someone who picks up a politician card, someone who says they're a doctor, someone who maybe says I'm the, everyday Joe, and then you role play these things. So you teach them slowly how to persuade, how to create a constructed argument, how to make your point, and then from there you can build to topical issues as well. So these are all sorts of ways.
And if people are shy,
Yeah.
they find role playing to be attractive because,
Exactly.
oh, I'm not myself,
That's
I'm
right.
a
Yeah.
plumber.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Right? And so that's, I just want to add that I'm just finishing the corrections on my new book, and it's how to start debating activities where you are. And what, like everything, recruiting, training, organizing, convincing your headmaster it's okay, raising money. But one of the biggest chapters is actually on training. And so I have like 60 different training activities for debate. And most of them apply well to
When
us
will that book be ready?
on the fall.
Right on.
That's what I'm told.
Congratulations.
Yeah, well, I believe it's maybe my last one, so.
You talked about how to get students to think beyond their own countries. One thing I've tried a few times with my club is after the debaters run the debate, and it's probably heavily on Canadian, or we use a lot of American examples, but sort of North American examples. Then I'll ask students in the crowd, all right, now, what if this debate took place in India? What would you have argued? How would you have structured the case differently? What would your examples have been?
That's good.
And maybe, this house would ban homework. What about if it was in, the townships of South Africa? How would you argue this case differently?
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
the homework one really struck me. Is that one? I'm sure my students would be.
Oh, yeah.
They'd be talking about themselves. The whole debate would be about themselves.
Yeah.
And their extracurriculars, and they want to spend time with their family, their friends. They wouldn't think. But that's a great one to run as a more of a global issue.
Okay, I'm stealing that.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah, that's a
idea.
great
That
idea.
is a good idea.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
You said in-round preparation. What does that mean? I'm not really familiar.
Oh,
with
so
American
do you
style.
know how, like in CX, you can take prep time between speeches, right? So
It's like
just
a
in world schools,
minute
we
or
don't
two.
have that. Sorry.
There's a ton
How
of
much time
like
is it?
in CX it's 8 minutes
Oh,
or 10
is it?
minutes.
Okay.
depending
Yeah.
on the tournament.
The total.
Lincoln Douglas is what, 3 or 5 now? Is it 5 now?
No, it's
I know
4.
some tournaments.
It's 4.
Is it 4? Yeah, I
Yeah,
knew they
I
had
don't know if
changed
Stanford's
it.
4.
But some tournaments used to, like out in California, used to offer, I think Stanford used to offer the longer prep time. But you can take as much of it as you want at any time. Obviously, there's strategic times you should and strategic times you shouldn't. But you can use it, and they time that as well. And so that's why that's kind of new to U.S. debaters to not have prep time
Right.
during the debate round. Actually, there's been a motion in the past to add prep time at Worlds, I believe.
A long time ago.
It didn't pass, but it was talked about, I think.
I mean, you don't have prep time in real life. Your opponent speaks, and you go, oh, I'll take 5 minutes, please.
Yeah.
I need to think about this for a while.
I don't know.
Cool. Any other questions or things to add to that?
How do you see your youth debating? What's your long-term vision for that?
I mean, my long-term vision is I still feel this is the first year of World Schools in our league, and although they're doing World Schools, someone who's very experienced with it would come in and be like, this isn't World Schools. So my long-term goal is to get them more knowledgeable about the format, to where in a few years we have teams that are competing on an international level.
And that is really, I think you're right. That's the way you want it to look like what they're doing at World Schools. That's it, because I know my debaters at first were just following what I had told them on my limited knowledge of World Schools, but more about just debating.
Right, and I mean, we had to do what's right for our kids, so we modified things this year
I applaud
to
you.
make the transition be an easy
Yep.
transition. But as they get more experience, we're going to be adding more impromptu rounds to the tournaments, and just adding things that we didn't add this year. So it will be a gradual step to it gets to the.
I think that makes sense because our primary school, you guys, your primary school coaches are 4 minutes?
4 minutes.
So you do 4 minutes. The primary school league of 8, 9s, and 10s do 4-minute baby speeches.
Interesting.
And then you slowly move them up. And then the most junior of the secondary school league, so middle schools,
Right.
they do the 5 minutes now, and they had no points of information, and now the speeches have all got points of information.
Right.
So we waited 2 or 3 years, got the teachers used to the idea, so new schools acclimatized to the idea, and now they all love the points of information. When you do your first
Right.
point of information, you sort of think I'm never going to do it. Then after that, you think, why on earth did I ever not want to do it?
Yeah.
I love that.
Right, it's the best part.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, another thing we're doing is like, so this year, everyone was like at ground level. It's the first time they're doing World Schools. So we only had one division, and by the time we got to the end of the year, our city championship tournament had like 70 teams in the World Schools division. So you had these experienced, amazing debaters, but then you have these newbies in there. So next year we're going to break off and do the varsity division and then the JV division. So
That's what we did in Mexico. We went just straight up the first year, and then the second year we established novice and varsity.
Right, and there'll be some differences between the two. We're playing with the idea of making the speeches shorter for JV, but we haven't, finalized that yet.
I mean, that's the way most countries do it. I mean, when you have the junior leagues, just give them shorter speeches so they can make more established points rather than just coming across with general things. So that at least you give them some depth and you encourage them to build ideas with some vigor.
Right, yeah, maybe give them less impromptu than the varsity and that kind of thing.
I may have missed on this, but have you had any debates in Spanish yet?
We have not, but we played with the idea. I know there was, Mark Webber was trying, or he did a tournament, with Spanish, PF, and Worlds. We tried to send teams to that, and we weren't able to. But doing Spanish debate in Worlds would be something we'd definitely be interested in.
And we're planning to include that again next year, and of course, we'd like to talk to others about it.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Including huddle teams.
Or you could say, if we have a Spanish language tournament, then the winner gets to go to a tournament in Mexico.
And we'd be glad to have you, and we would house you. And feed. We have good food at our tournaments. It's Mexico.
Sounds great. If you could scroll just the resources page, most of you guys have seen all this stuff. We've kind of talked about this already, but the last page in there, towards the back end of the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
So I put a few things that I found most helpful during the year as we were working with our students and teachers. Of course, this has been talked about today, but I think the first two debate academies are very important and very great opportunities. I was able to go to the second one in Vermont last summer. It was incredible. I learned so much, and I was able to give that information to my students.
And we made them debate.
Oh yeah, that was, I didn't even come from a debate background, so that was like trial by fire those few days. So that was pretty cool. On our site, the Houston Urban Debate League, I've put up quite a lot of stuff about judge training and links to things I found helpful. Tuna site, Debate Central, invaluable. I can't tell you how many times I go there and watch the videos. It's a great place to just go and flow rounds and learn all kind of stuff and let your students watch them. Amazing. In terms of literature and like a guide for teachers to hand teachers, I found this one amazing. It's from the South African Schools Debating Board. It's only about a 30-page document, but I feel it goes in depth enough to give teachers and students a good background in World Schools without giving them like a 200-page document to read. So I've distributed that to all of our coaches. Most of our coaches have found it helpful too.
Good.
And finally, the emails for both me and Sandra. And I have copies of this page with me over here, so if you don't want to write down all the URLs, you can just come grab a copy from me. And I think that's it, unless there's some questions.
Hooray, huddle.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Huge town with movers and shakers.
What were they saying?